no answers. If you can't do that, just submit them to me later because I don't have but just a little bit of time allotted to me. Isn't it correct that the vast majority of mercury emissions in our air comes from natural sources such as volcanoes and forest fires or from foreign sources? Second, isn't it also correct that the EPA's proposed rule cites the estimates of global mercury emissions that range from 7,300 to 8,300 tons per year, and between 50 and 70% of that is from natural sources, less than 50% of which would be from man-made sources? Yes or no?
I'll provide
You'll provide me with an answer. I appreciate that.
Yes.
It seems that the EPA has published that the mercury coming from U.S. power plants of about 29 tons per year under this proposed rule. And isn't it true that that's about a third of the percent of the total global mercury air emissions? You'll give me an answer later.
Again, I will, yes.
I appreciate that. And I question, as others have, how you can estimate and then build from that estimate other projections of what's going to happen to the coal-fired power plants when First Energy alone has closed or has eliminated 3.3 of your 4.7 gigawatts of power alone. That doesn't count the other folks. And here's the concern that I have. AEP estimated at a meeting that I was at earlier this year that with the new rules, they were going to have to expend money to clean up another 12% of the air. And there's no question that's a good thing to clean it up. But that for the consumers in the AEP footprint in my area of Virginia, they would pay an additional 10 to 15%. Now, I asked Lisa Jackson earlier this year, and she didn't have an answer for me. And if you've got one, please submit it later. What is the impact when I've got a district with the median household income is $36,000 a year? You raise the electric cost. What's the health impact on my constituents when they can't afford to heat their homes? And doesn't that have a negative impact? And I don't believe that was considered in your estimates of the health benefits. And so I would ask that you submit that to me as well. And I would submit to you also that having people out of work also affects their health. I think every statistic shows that. And I pick up Mr. McKinley's chart, and he showed you the coal power plants that are closing down. And we've got a dot right here. That's the same spot in a small county that Boiler MACT might very well put 700 jobs out of business at. So we're double whammying with different EPA rules the rural communities of this country. And I would have to ask you, do you know if the new Dominion plant being built in Virginia City area is going to meet the new standards that you all have come out with? Do you know that?
I do not. I'm not familiar with
If you could find out for me, I appreciate it, because that's just south of this dot right here. And so what we're talking about is from one regulation after another, the 9th District of Virginia and all the parts of the country are being hammered on jobs. And I submit to you that the United States has got a job problem, if y'all haven't figured that out by now, and that we shouldn't be piling on regulations that are killing jobs. We want to move in the right direction, but we can't be killing our economy. And I would have to ask you that if we had a regulation that we could eliminate an instrumentality or something, we were going to get rid of power and we're going to get rid of those jobs, if we could save from 1990 to the present, I'm looking at page 9 of your report where you said that the current regs had saved 160,000 lives. What if in that same time period we could have eliminated direct, not indirect, but direct, about 700,000 premature deaths? Would that be a good thing? And should we have regulations that would prohibit and make it clear that those deaths wouldn't occur?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed the question.
The question is, if there were a regulation that could save directly 700,000, forget the job impact, 700,000 lives, would you all be recommending that to the President?
I would have to tell you I'd have to decide whether it was consistent with the law and my authority. That's all I'm doing here.
Okay.
That's all I would speak to.
So you wouldn't be, notwithstanding the fact that we could save all those lives, it wouldn't matter, is what you're saying.
I would be happy to save every life we could save, obviously.
But you understand that there's always a trade-off, and that sometimes you can't make the world perfect. You understand that? EPA can't make the world perfect. You don't control the Chinese. You don't control a lot of parts of the world. You can't even make the United States perfect, can you?
Right. Hopefully that's not the mission of the agency.
Well, it sure seems like you want to make it perfect because you want to wipe out everything related to coal as far as those of us in the coal industry and areas are concerned, and you're killing jobs left and right with no regard for what's going to happen to the people in those areas. And when you raise the cost of electricity, it doesn't appear to me that you have any regard for the cost of the people who have to pay those heat bills and those electric bills who cannot afford to do so. And I had a manufacturer in my district here this morning. I stepped out to talk to him, and I said that that's what we were looking at, and that's what we were talking about today. And they said, please don't let that happen. We can't afford to be any less competitive than we are right now with our foreign competitors, et cetera. So this is why you're getting so much concern from this committee today. And I appreciate your testimony, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
This time I recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.